Yo, what's good, guys? It is your host, Sage the Samurai here, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm here to bring you guys on our part 2, What If Deku was Shisui's Reincarnation, Part 9. Thank you all so much for tuning into this part, guys. Hopefully you guys do enjoy yourselves, get comfortable, get your snacks, get a blanket, enjoy yourselves pretty much. And at that same time, guys, please ignore any background noises or any stuttering that may occur during this recording. Mostly due to the fact that I will be trying to edit it out, but if I can't and you guys end up hearing it, just ignore it because it'll make the video multiple times better. And also, I'd really appreciate it. If you guys understand all that, thank you very much. And yeah, let's get into it.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
Alright guys, let's begin this what if. Hopefully you guys do enjoy, and either way, let's begin. We kick this off with the Shi Hasaki arc. I don't know if I said it right, but moving on. Either way, we now kick off this arc with Aizawa as he's introducing Class 1A to the people who will teach him about hero work studies, this being the big three, the third year students of UA, ranking at the very top of it. Now, this is where we get introduced to Mirio as well as the rest of them, as Mirio begins to pretty much just introduce themselves, with the rest of them introducing themselves in their own comedic way. All the while this was happening though, this is when Mirio would then suddenly end up looking into everyone's eyes, especially Deku, who was currently right now sitting down there as he had just recently been done with his punishment. As this is when Mirio would then have a certain gleam in his eyes, as this is when he then decides that the best way to teach them was by beating them, as he then decides to challenge Class 1A to a battle. Everyone in Class 1A would be in shock, but this is when Aizawa would actually allow it, surprising them even further. But they decide to go along with it as a way to test out how strong the third years are compared to them. Deku himself will be especially interested considering the fact that he can just feel it, the unbridled energy of Mirio, as well as this undeeming power that he seemed to hold within him, as we now change scenes. They'll all be dressed up in their hero gear as they prepare for the battle against Mirio. The long-range fighters in the back, while the close-range fighters in the front. Now, as they all prepare themselves for battle, this is when Mirio would just be currently doing his stretches until it was finally time for them to begin. And just like in canon, Mirio would then suddenly melt into the ground as his pants would then fall off. Everyone will be in shock as this is when Mirio would then appear in front of one of the students, causing them to actually scream out in shock, not at the fact that Mirio was appearing in front of them, no. It was the fact that he was butt booty naked in front of them. As he would then punch her in the stomach, this is when the rest of Class 1A will be in shock. All the while, Deku was keeping track of Mirio's abilities, as he will see Mirio begin to fall into the ground once again, as the rest of Class 1A begin to attack him. However, their attacks were ineffective. They would just phase right through him. So I see. He has an ability that allows him to phase through things. However, there has to be a disadvantage with this. Just as Deku would think this, there will be a presence behind him, as he then turns around to see none other than Mirio's fist coming towards him. Deku seeing this would of course dodge out the way, as of course being known as the teleporter, Deku will be able to dodge out the way and move a very long distance away from Mirio. And at that same time, Deku would then shoot out multiple flaming arrows at Mirio, who of course phases through them. Wow, you're fast, Mirio would say as he then goes into the ground again, before appearing in front of the other students and begin to knock them down. Deku will begin to keep track of Mirio throughout the entire time, as he would then appear in front of Mirio just as he was about to land a good hit into, let's say, Uraraka's stomach. Now Deku would appear in front of him as Mirio will be in shock. However, he will be even more in shock as he would feel his fist get caught as he would even be slammed into the ground. It will happen so fast that Mirio's body couldn't react. As he will be caught off guard by this, he would then suddenly end up phasing once again, phasing to the ground as Deku would then phase throughout his fist, letting go of the grip. Gosh dang it, Deku would think, as Mirio would then suddenly appear once again behind Deku, as Deku would then suddenly swing with his fist, only for Mirio to phase right through it, as Mirio would try to punch Deku in the face, but again, Deku dodges out the way. Now at this point, it will be just Mirio versus Deku at this point, with Mirio trying to give, or at least trying to land a blow on Deku, with Deku being unable to land a blow on Mirio. They were both quite even. However, Deku himself realized that Mirio was not playing games. This man definitely knew what he was doing, while Mirio himself instantly already knew that Deku was like the top students here. In fact, he would be confident that Deku would be at their level, if not on the level of pros, similar to him. As both of them were facing off against each other, this is when Mirio decides to kick it up a notch. As after one more collision or false collision between the two, both of them will separate as the rest of the students were currently still writhing on the ground from the pain of their stomach. Wow, you really are strong. Stronger than the others, I have to admit that. Oh, I guess there's no point in not taking you serious then, Mirio would say, As this when suddenly his voice would then take a darker turn, as he would then begin to get serious. Golden lightning begins to erupt up from him, as this when he then screams mentally, "One for all, 20%, Mirio will shout. His body begins to spark dangerously with electricity, while Deku would be there in shock. That power, there's no doubt about it. He's the next wielder. Seeing Mirio beginning to transform, Deku would smirk as well, seeing that he might as well get a little bit serious as well. So with that, the flames that are erupting around Deku begin to take a bluish turn, as this is when Deku's flames will actually take a slightly greenish one as well, as Deku decides to test out a new form that he created. As him and Mirio were about to get into combat, this is when suddenly Aizawa would then cut them off before they can do anything too serious, saying that the fight has ended. Now, this will cause both Mirio and Deku to deactivate their abilities, although both of them were quite a little bit frustrated, especially Deku, since he was actually having a little bit of fun. This was the first time he faced off against an enemy where he actually wondered exactly what he could do. He also wanted to test out the limits of Mirio's ability. Could Genjutsu work on him? Could any of his abilities work on him? Or is he just impervious to all of it? Well, Mirio himself was wondering how long could he keep it up. After all, if let's say Deku were to spread those flames all around, Mirio would have a hard time breathing, as legit Deku will be cutting off the oxygen relatively quickly. Overall, both of them have many ways to defeat each other, or at least that's what Mirio thinks, so he wondered exactly who would win in the end. However, eventually, as the time would pass, this is when Mirio begins to explain to the rest of Class 1A the whole purpose of this. The whole training, how he proved his body, how he improved his quirk, and pretty much the steps and processes that he went through to get this strong. And that's exactly what it takes to be the number one hero, or just be a hero in general. Of course, everyone in Class 1A will be actually really happy about this, as just like that, Mirio and the rest of the Big Three would then head off. However, before they head off completely though, this is when Mirio would actually turn to Deku, telling him that next time they should really do have a rematch where both of them go all out, as Mirio was actually really excited at the prospect of facing off against someone like Deku, while Deku himself would actually smile, saying that he liked the idea as well, with both of them going their separate ways. However, right before the rest of Class 1A can leave, this is when Aizawa would then begin to explain to them that Mirio is not like any other student, especially since he is a contender for the number one hero, that's including the pros. And of course, everyone will be shocked at this, especially Deku, who raised an eyebrow at this. With the power that he has, I wouldn't doubt it at all. In fact, I can see him surpassing them in an instant. Deku would smirk at the prospect of this. However, this is when he then walks off, already knowing that at the end of the day, he will just have to wait and see until they're able to fight again. So after that, we will now change scenes to where we see Shigaraki. The man himself has gone through various amount of upgrades, as he has been given multiple quirks thanks to the doctor, and pretty much thanks to One For All pushing everything onto Shigaraki. Shigaraki himself had gone through multiple damages, both physically and psychologically, to the point where he actually they actually had to develop special pills created for him, so that way his mental state can at least remain subtly calm. However, any mention of Deku or him appearing will cause Shigaraki to begin to instantly break down. It's just as if Deku's name is like a trigger for him, and whenever Deku names appear, he'll either go through multiple mood swings. Now, of course, it's not much of a problem when Shigaraki mentions himself. If he mentions Deku out of his mouth, it doesn't really affect him too much, although he does go a little bit crazy. He starts saying oh, he can't wait to destroy him and everything, similar to the Joker with Batman, but he's now able to have more control over it with the pills, of course. So anyway, the whole reason why I'm talking about Shigaraki is because right now him and Overhaul are currently in the midst of negotiating. Overhaul had understood the terms from the last negotiation, but Shigaraki wanted to meet him up close and personal. Since now that, well, of course, All For One has been captured, Shigaraki has now taken up the mantle as the leader. So as the leader, he needs to make sure that his partners know who they're dealing with. And of course, as they begin to talk, Shigaraki begins to make sure of the deal while Overhaul just nods. And already seeing how Overhaul was acting, Shigaraki already knew that this man did not respect them at all. He saw them as a joke, which was true. Overhaul did not have any respect for the League of Villains, calling them children who play villains. And of course, Shigaraki, due to the fact of the pills, he remains calm, as he could already tell that something bad will happen to Overhaul, and that at the end of the day, they will be the ones to stay standing while he falls quickly. As Overhaul will tell them that, not to get in his way and just to fund his research, and that whenever they end up messing up, he will make sure to clean up the messes. However, if it goes beyond that, he won't do anything. Now Shigaraki says nothing more as he agrees to this, while Overhaul just smirks and walks off. However, right before he does though, this is when Shigaraki would then let Overhaul know on one thing. Once again, checking on the deal to make sure that it's completely good, but at the same time, he begins to tell Overhaul that he needs to watch his back. The world is expanding. Multiple heroes are rising, especially heroes who can take you out with a single glance. At just an image of Deku, Shigaraki has to legit bury his fingers into his arm just to prevent himself from lashing out just at the thought of Deku. Now, of course, Overhaul will look at Shigaraki for an instant before laughing, as he tells him that he already has an idea for that. However, he does tell Shigaraki that he will make good on his deal. After all, he will be helping out the League of Villains. He just doesn't respect them as much. So as Shigaraki would see this is when we now turn to the next instance, of course. So we now turn to Class 1A, as now everyone is now getting started with their internship, with Deku once again interning for Edgeshot. Now, originally, Deku was supposed to go with Night Eye, Deku's old partner, but that was when he had, One for All, like he had in canon. But since this Deku doesn't have it, it would just be Mirio, who already was working for him anyway. While Deku himself will already be working for Edgeshot, as mostly due to the fact that, him and Edgeshot already had a prior connection, and also because of the fact that, no one else really worked better for Deku than Edgeshot. Both of them had their same field of work, and although Edgeshot is, not exactly as skilled as he was back then, Edgeshot definitely was someone who could thrive in the world of Naruto. So, of course, Deku have his respect for him and decide to work for him. So as the following months begin to pass by, as Deku interns with Edgeshot, they begin to collect information on the League of Villains. Now, during this time, him and Edgeshot will be seeing many weird things, such as illegal trades, new weapons beginning to sprout out for villains, and almost as if the League of Villains was getting stronger. Now, of course, Deku and Edgeshot would shut these down as they would see them happen, with Deku and Edgeshot had shutting down multiple cases, with Edgeshot even using his own connections to stop them down as well. However, at the end of the day, multiple of them were spreading way too fast. And at that same instance, as Deku would be analyzing the information, he would be trying to get up any signatures on Shigaraki, which surprisingly the man has been inactive. Now, of course, Deku would wonder what was going on, as he already saw the regeneration quirk that Shigaraki had from last time, and he already knows Shigaraki's original ability, so he will be making sure to keep an eye on Shigaraki to make sure that nothing was happening. He would be trying to find any intel on him, or any intel at all about what was happening. However, on the other hand, there was another villain that was making his way through the league, and that was Overhaul. Now, Deku and Edgeshot had already got information from him prior, but the thing was, this man was mad arrogant. He was making way too many sightings. And the reason for this one is that in this world, I can see Overhaul getting a semi-god complex in this one. Pretty much, the man has become very arrogant, and the reason for this is pretty simple. Since the League of Villains are now funding his own research, which adds another plan to expand, and not only that, but thanks to the fact that now One for All, All Might technically, and All for One have now been taken out of the equations, he's now pretty much putting himself on a high pinnacle. Sure, there were the other heroes, but the chances of running into them were very low, especially since he has eyes in different locations. So Overhaul is legit making his way through the entire time, acting all arrogant, unaware that Deku and as well as Edgeshot and all their connections was currently keeping tabs on him and making sure that one day he will slip, and when he slips, they will capture him. So as one day, as Deku and Edgeshot were currently taking a break, with Deku now had finished relaxing and drinking his tea, he would tell Edgeshot that he was heading off for a little bit. Edgeshot will understand, telling Deku to report any information back to him if he found anything, to which Deku would do so. And at that same instance, we will see Mirio also heading out alone on a patrol, as this is when they will then both encounter each other. Now, of course, Deku and Mirio would of course get along as they begin to talk about their experiences in their internship. Now, a little something I didn't mention before was the fact that Mirio and Deku had a little bit of a friendship going on, and that was just after the very first instances of their fight. Now, of course, after the fight and after the many months that followed, Deku and Mirio would actually encounter each other often during their patrols, with Deku scouring information and Mirio just on patrol usually. Now, this will cause both of them to have a good friendship, and this will cause them to actually increase their rivalry, as both of them begin to explain the heroically exploits that they have gone on. With Deku actually one-upping Mirio on many occasions, mostly because of the fact that Mirio just patrols, while Deku's actually entering enemy bases and just collecting information. He's doing some dangerous stuff. But moving forward, both of them will be sharing each other's stories, pretty much explaining out how things have been going on. However, just as they were talking, this is when they would then come across a certain alleyway. And just as they were walking past it, a little girl would then suddenly run towards Deku and bump into him. However, right before she could bump into him, Deku would actually catch her, and this is when he then encounters Eri. Now, Eri was crying and shaking, as Deku will be wondering what was going on with this child. He'll begin to ask her questions, asking if she was alright or if she was lost, but this is when suddenly footsteps will then be heard. Eri, why you run off? Overhaul would say, as he would then suddenly walk out of the alleyway, and as he does, he'll be staring down at Eri, who currently right now is shaking and crying in Deku's arms. Deku himself would be looking down at Eri, and as soon as he looks up and sees Overhaul's face, Deku's expression would then turn into a hollow look, as this is when Eri will be shaking even further as she begins to tell Deku that she did not want to go. Now, of course, Overhaul will be listening to her as he chuckles, telling Eri to come along with him and to return back home. Mirio himself was also shaking as he knew this guy. He knew him very well. Night had been keeping an eye on him and has been informing Mirio about who exactly this man was. While Mirio himself would, of course, want to act right now, he knew that this would cause too much attention. And if this were to go exactly how it was supposed to go in canon, Eri would run back to Overhaul and we would get this very long arc where they're trying to save her. But that was because of the fact of Deku's skill set, that he had it in the canon. This Deku had a different skill set. As Deku would look down at Eri, who was on the verge of having a psychological breakdown, shaking, and had tears, and suddenly stared directly into Overhaul's eyes. And just like that, as Overhaul begins to explain to Eri that it was finally time for it to return back, as he prepares to actually lift up his glove, this is when he would then freeze. I can't move, he would say, as the world around him would then warp, as he will be transferred over to another world. He'll be currently being stuck to a totem pole, as he would then see multiple Dekus surrounding him, each one of them having the eternal Sharingan eyes staring up at him. What is this? What are you doing to me? He would say as he tries to activate his quirk, but it was pointless. It is pointless, Deku would say, as he begins to walk out, this one being kind of like the leader of all of them, as he walks in front of Overhaul. This is no longer your own reality. I'm in control. And just as he said that, this is when suddenly the Sharingan eye symbol would then appear above the head of Overhaul. In fact, it will be surrounding the entire area that they were in, the entire alternate reality that they were in. At this, Overhaul will be shaking right now as the tremendous power that Deku was unleashing was something that he couldn't withstand. Let me out! Let me out! He would say as he begins to shake and shake, but it was pointless. At this, Deku wouldn't look at Overhaul's eyes, and just like that, Deku would begin to analyze the information, everything he did, everything this pathetic scum, this excuse of a living being had done. And just like that, his fate was sealed. This is your execution. At this, Overhaul would be there in shock, as this was suddenly the generous beam of light would then suddenly slam upon him, as his body would be agonizing. He was disintegrated to nothing. There was nothing left of Overhaul, nothing at all. But if you think that was the end of it, no. That was just the beginning. After all, Overhaul has a total of 300 more days left to go. That's right. And every single time that he dies in this reality, he'll be brought back and suffering the same pain over and over again, listening to the same speech. Although on the outside he wasn't killing him, on the inside, he was dead. There was no way he was returning back from this. If you now flash back to reality, you'll see Deku staring down at Overhaul, who at this point was paling as his body was unresponsive. At this, Mary will be confused. What did you do to him? He would say. Deku would then get up, as Eri would be, of course, confused as well. She'd be holding onto Deku's leg, who pats her. It's gonna be fine, he would say. At this, Deku would then summon out a clone, as the clone would then slowly walk over to Overhaul, as he would then turn to Deku before nodding, and then using the body flicker to move the body away. Let's report this. It's about time we start getting rid of the scum now, Deku would say. At this, Deku had seen the memories of Overhaul, and he realized that at the end of the day, pulling his punches was doing no good. Sure, with pulling his punches, Deku was able to test out his opponents and, actually have at least a little bit of interesting things happen. But what was the point of having all this strength and restraining yourself? Especially when you restrain your strength, innocent people were getting hurt because of it. With this, Deku would then begin to look towards Mirio and then look towards Eri, who, of course, right now was confused about what just happened, but at the same time, she was glad. As this is when Deku would then carry her as he tells Mirio that it was time for them to move. As we now move forward. Now, time skip happening, Overhaul was taken into questioning, but unfortunately for him, Deku had legit destroyed his mind. Like, guys, you have to realize something. Deku did not hold back on that one. He let his emotions get the better of him, and because of that, Overhaul was stuck in that loop of him just dying over and over again by disintegration was out of control, insane for 300 days. All right, that would be enough to shatter anyone's mind at that point. And the fact that it didn't happen instantaneously, as each time he would be disintegrated, will happen longer and longer. Like, no, dude, you're not surviving that. So yeah, Overhaul had turned into a potato, dude. Like, this man was non-responsive. He was not dead, but he wasn't really alive either. There was just a hollow shell now. However, luckily, thanks to the fact of Deku reading his memories, he would tell Edshaw about the location of the base, and also pretty much everything about Overhaul, his connections with the League of Villains, and everything. And of course, after gathering all this information, Edshaw trusts Deku, by the way, so he didn't ask about his questioning methods. He would then inform the rest of the heroes, who would then storm into the base. However, this time Deku and Mirio do not join in on this one, as although Mirio did want to help out, he also wanted to help out Eri, who was still very, shooken up by the whole experience. Now, during this time, Deku would of course be helping out Mirio, as they will both take care of Eri, and at that same time, this is when Deku would actually have an idea. Since Eri right here was most of the time, like, she was like still traumatized and everything, she didn't really smile much, as Deku had legit, although he didn't like it, he used the Sharingan to see into her memories, and he saw everything she experienced. It was not something pretty, alright? And after collecting all this information, this is when he then decides to come up with an idea. And that's for Eri to actually go with Aizawa, who, after hearing about this child's backstory, Aizawa would actually take up the mantle of being the one to be her caretaker. Mostly due to the fact that he understands that Eri has lived a very sad life, and not only that, but she has a very potentially extremely dangerous quirk, if not the most dangerous that they've seen so far. And due to that, what better way to keep it under control than by having him look after it? And at that same time, as Aizawa would actually be looking after her, this is when Deku would actually recommend the idea that, him and Mirio will come and visit once in a while, so that way she can at least, have other people to talk to, or at least have like some type of older brother figure in her life. Now, of course, Aizawa was open up to the idea, as the rest of the heroes were not really fully on board with it, but seeing the fact that Aizawa was under control, and due to the fact they already know Aizawa's quirk, they decided to allow it to happen. So yeah, Eri is still being taken care of by Aizawa. And after all this was happening, the rest of this information was actually broadcasted all about, as Overhaul was actually announced to be taken under custody. They'll begin to explain some of his actions, not all of it, as they don't want to terrify the public about how disgusting this man truly was. But at that same instance, they were also broadcasting this to the League of Villains, as this was their way of giving them a warning, saying that if they step out of line, they're next. And the person who's right now watching all this will be Shigaraki. He will be listening in, as he can hear about how Overhaul was captured, how they stormed the base, took the information, and pretty much everything. However, Shigaraki did not care, as he will be looking up at the announcements that were broadcasted all about, as this was their warning. He would scoff at it. He could already assume how Overhaul had gotten captured. After all, as there were some footage that was being broadcasted about the base being stormed. Now, he would see this, and he could already tell that Overhaul wasn't even there. This man was captured way earlier, and he could already have a sneaking suspicion as to why. Maybe you can call it the fact of his own trauma with the certain teleporter, or maybe you can just call it his own personal intuition, but he could already assume that Deku was definitely 100% the reason for why he got captured. As he will be looking up into the screen, this is when he would then turn it off, as the doctor, who currently right now was making sure that Shigaraki was stable, as Shigaraki was still getting an influx of abilities. This is when Shigaraki wouldn't speak up. Enough of this, he would say, as he gets up. At this, the doctor would see Shigaraki move, as he tries to tell Shigaraki to take his pills, but Shigaraki would shake his head. No, I'm perfectly in control. It's just that we don't really need him. We already got what we wanted. As this was only a few feet away from Shigaraki, you will see it. The quirk destroying bullets. At this was part of the trade, as this was some of the power that Overhaul had offered to them in exchange for funding his research, to which, of course, the League of Villains would take it. Now, of course, Overhaul did not respect them, but hey, at the end of the day, they were giving him money, and the more money means he can get more resources, and the more resources means he can make more of his own product. So overall, the man was pretty good until he got captured. But now the League of Villains also got what they wanted, as all they needed was this stuff, and Overhaul was practically useless to them after that. Sure, he had a powerful quirk, but at the end of the day, they have their own ways of taking quirks. So as Shigaraki then walks over to one of the quirk-destroying bullets, he'll then pick up the guns as he will then, put one of the quirk-destroying bullets into it, as he then looks up into darkness. At this, he will see an image of Deku appearing in front of him, that boy who with the eternal Sharingan eyes staring back at him, as this is when he finally decides that he will take care of him personally. The moment is now. It's either one, that kid becomes a ginormous threat and foils all his plans, or two, destroy him while he's young, so that way they can finally end up going through with their plan with no one stopping them. To minimize the risk and to push forward to success, Shigaraki would then turn to the doctor, telling him to search up any information on the recent teleporter, as they had found out about Deku's hero name. The teleporter, they definitely found that out. So of course, they will decide to search up any information on him, anything that will give them a fighting chance, or anything that could allow them to personally get rid of this nuisance. Now, Shigaraki would, of course, order the doctor, who would do so. He would contact all the men, as now that, All For One was captured, Shigaraki was technically their new boss. He was the one who was in control. So with that, Shigaraki decides to make use of these resources, as he finally decides that now it was the time for action. And now it was finally time for them to eliminate Izuku Midoriya. What do you guys think is going to happen in the next part? How exactly you think this all is going to blow over? And overall, what do you guys think of this story so far? It's your host, Seishi Samurai, and he's ending this part right here. Thank you all so much for tuning into this one, guys. Honestly, I have to admit, this what if was like fire, honestly. Now, I understand this might seem a little bit sudden, but the thing is, what would be the point of making my characters OP and just like nerfing them down so that way they can fight on other people's level? It just made no sense. Plus, not only that, but I realized that if Deku were to continue fighting at the way he is, more bad things can potentially end up happening. I mean, after all, Deku was a trained shinobi in the Naruto world. He was Shisui the teleporter. And you're telling me that he's having some hard times against some villains with some slightly powerful quirks? No, dude. Now, of course, Deku will run into a few challenges. After all, the world of My Hero is pretty big, and of course, there will be some people or some villains with some very powerful abilities. But at the end of the day, Deku will be able to overcome them. But at least now with this one, I believe Deku will be now being more active. There will be more foils to the villain's plan. And not only that, but this will end up leading to the final conclusion of this entire story, which was a long time coming, as this story has now been on for many months now. So it's finally time for us to put an end to it. So yeah, guys, hopefully you guys understand all of that. It's your host, Seiji Samurai, and he's signing off. Please enjoy yourselves. Have a lovely day and be safe. So with that, I'm out. Peace.